Good afternoon, everyone. This is George of George at Large. I've been away for a while. I had a bit of illness through the winter, and I'm sure both of my fans were disappointed, but I am back. And I want to thank BevCam for allowing me to do this. It's a lot of fun. I enjoy it. And I'm also would like to promote the art students to start getting their butts out on the street with their sketch pads. This is an art college town, and there's no evidence of art students anywhere. Now, you can see me on Saturdays set up with my craft work on the street across from Worthy Girl and the Atomic. And I'd like the art students to come by. And if any of them need any leather scraps for projects, I'd be happy to donate some. But today, I'm going to tell a story about what happened to me out west in Montana, where I spent a lot of years growing up and living there. And it involves a grizzly bear hide. It involves some disreputable people who were actually my relatives doing nefarious things. And 10 days in jail also, and a cabin way up in the mountains, and the reading of all of Tolkien's trilogy of Lord of the Rings. So anyhow, a little context is that Troy, Montana is a very small town up in the very northwest part of Montana. It's the last town on Highway 2 as you're going west. It's right in the heart of the Purcell Mountain Range, but it is only 1,800 feet above sea level. Has a large major river that flows through it, the Kootenai. It's kind of a big valley and surrounded by mountains, and a pretty cool place. There's maybe 1,000 people there, that's it. And so I went to high school there, and I lived there for several years, and before that, at the current time of the story, I had traveled from Somerville in Cambridge, where I'd spent a winter, and I had a girlfriend named Valerie. I was 21, she was 19. We were both young and full of piss and vinegar, as they say. And we took the Rabbit Line bus company from Cambridge out to Denver. And that was a kind of an old hippie bus situation where you paid $40 and they loaded everybody in, and there was mattresses front to back. All your luggage was under the floor of the mattresses, and they got us all the way to Denver. And that was quite fun. And we hitchhiked from Denver up to Troy, Montana, and we were just kind of kicking around there for the summer. I used to live in in a house on Callahan Creek, and it had a series of 4 little cabins. So it was a motel before the highway bypassed it, and it kind of went under. But as a young teenager, I did live in the main house. So we went out there exploring, and it turns out the 4 cabins were just getting put back into gear for small rental places. So my girlfriend and I, we talked to the landlord, and we rented the bigger cabin, which had 2 bedrooms, for a handshake and for fixing it up. It needed to have a door put on it. It needed a window put in, and it just needed cleaning up, and then all the area around it needed a lot of junk getting rid of. And I had a pickup truck. I had a 53 Chevy. Had a beautiful chrome sun visor and a spotlight. So that was pretty cool when you're 21, right? So we did some dump runs, and in the course of doing the dump runs, we met some of the dump bums, or hobos. And they lived down below the dump towards the river where the Great Northern Railroad had a set of tracks. And they would live down below the dump, and they would collect junk and stuff from the dump and sell it. And then they could hop a freight and go all the way over to Spokane pretty easily. So we went down there to talk to them and kind of goof off and see what they had for sale. Well, they had a grizzly bear hide, a silverback grizzly. It's not a really big one, but it was a real grizzly hide. So I bought it for $5, and because I'm a leather guy, and I brought it home, and I was going to clean it up and make a bearskin rug out of it. So anyhow, that was going on. I put it in a big barrel and letting it soak with some salt in it to kind of preserve it till I could get at it. So in the meantime, my younger sister, Jackie, she needed a place to live. She was pregnant, and so she asked if she could move in with us and pay half the rent. And I really didn't know my sister Jackie that well because I hadn't spent a lot of time growing up with her. All of us siblings were all pretty scattered as we were growing up. But we were kind-hearted hippies, and we said okay, and we let her move in. And she didn't do anything. She didn't pay half the rent. She didn't do any cleaning. She didn't do anything at all. Turns out she's just a lazy person. So we were trying to put up with it as best we could, and we were doing all of our young people stuff like collecting herbs and drying them over the sink, and trying to go to festivals and party. And I had accumulated some money during the time that I was in Somerville and Cambridge. So we had enough money to get by for the summer without having to really have a real job. And in that part of the world, there weren't a whole lot of real jobs anyways. But on another podcast, I'll describe some of those because they are kind of gone now. You can't even find them anymore. But anyhow, my sister and my mother was another one of these people that was not a very good person. And they were conspiring to get the whole house away from my girlfriend and I. And of course, as you know, girlfriends and mothers and sisters, they don't always get along. So I was oblivious to all this because I was just trying to get a lot of work and chores done all the time. But anyhow, I started getting around to tanning the grizzly bear hide. So one day I was up to my elbows trying to get any of the fat off of the skin and stuff like that, and a cop shows up, one of the local cops. Now, in those days, there weren't a whole lot of phones. There were no cell phones. There were, very few pay phones. And people would rely on the cops to bring messages to people that lived out of town that didn't have phones. And it was a pretty normal thing. So he said that my mother wanted to get a hold of me. And then he sees the grizzly bear hide. And I'm like, well, I don't have a permit for it. And he's asking for the tag and the permit and all that. And I said, well, I don't have one. I bought it from the bums at the dump. So this led him to have to report it. So he reports it to the Fish and Game people. So they didn't show up. They said, well, it's a pretty simple matter. You just do what you have to do for now. And this is on a Friday evening. So when this is going on, a state trooper shows up, and he has an eviction notice, and we have to vacate the property immediately, if not sooner. And then they go and they rush into the house, and they're searching for drugs. And we had all these herbs hanging up drying in the kitchen. So they all checked them out, and there was a big brouhaha going on. Stand there, don't move, all this stuff that cops do. And so the state trooper's talking to me, and he says, well, I have this eviction notice from your landlord, and your sister is the rightful renter, and she has a receipt. And I said, well, that's not exactly what happened. So I told him my whole side of the story. And he kind of started to get the gist of it, that we were getting railroaded out of there, because he had interviewed my mother and my sister, who happened to be sitting in her car about 50 yards away watching the whole thing. So anyhow, the state trooper was a pretty good guy. the local cop, he was a pretty good guy, and they said, well, we got to go see the judge, and you'll have to answer for this grizzly bear hide. And I said, all right, whatever. And the state trooper, he said, well, look, I know that this isn't quite kosher, so I'm going to give your girlfriend, the whole weekend and part of next week to find herself a place to live and to move. And luckily, I had my truck was there, and she could drive it. So off we go. I'm off to the judge's place in Libby, Montana, the next town over, about 18 miles. So we get there and we go to the judge's office, and we're standing there before his desk, and I tell him my story, and he says, well, you've lived in the state long enough and grew up here. You should know better than you can't just do that sort of thing. So I'm not going to fine you any money, but I'm going to sentence you to 10 days in jail. 10 days in jail. It's like, oh, you're kidding me. And my girlfriend has to move and find a place to live. I pleaded that, and he said, nope. But as I'm standing there going through all this, I'm looking at all of the photos on the back wall behind his desk, and it's guys fishing and hunting and, camping and guys with cars and stuff. Well, the landlord and the judge are there arm in arm at holding up a trophy deer. So they're good friends. And it was not too long after that, after I got out of jail, and you get back to the rumor mill, that it turns out that my sister had slept with the landlord in order to get the receipt. And of course, she had paperwork, and they just believed her. They had to. There wasn't any choice. So anyhow, that's unfortunately, my younger sister did not turn out to have to be a very good person, and she wasn't around that long. She got into very bad health, diabetic stuff, and all that. And she had a bunch of kids, and none of them were quite right, because she still drank and smoked cigarettes, and it was kind of sad. She died at 55, and but anyhow, I'm doing the 10 days in jail. Now, jail is not like what you see in the movies and TV and stuff. It's very, very boring. All you do is just hang around and read bad paperbacks and wait for the next meal that's going to come through. So at the 10 days, so a couple of days go by, and you're getting to know all the guys in there. There's middle-aged guys that got DUIs, and there's other guys for petty theft and disturbing the peace and stuff like that. And everybody's sitting around just playing cards and smoking cigarettes. And so here's a tip: if you ever do get thrown in jail and they let you smoke, they don't do that anymore. But you want to get the Pall Mall's Red Pack, because they're full-size cigarettes with no filter. So you get to smoke them longer, and you're more able to put yourself in an early grave with the Pall Mall Reds. I personally smoked Lucky Strikes without filters, which is, just a normal size cigarette. But anyhow, the other jailhouse thing is to eat everything that they bring you, no matter whether you like it or not. Just eat it, because you're going to be losing weight while you're in there. Now, everybody that was in there, they're just playing cards and hanging around. I'm reading all the Tom Clancy books and stuff like that, and there's no literature in there. It's just all escape novels. But we did have an American Indian. He came in around day 6. He had to be in there for a couple of days, and he was kind of afraid to be in there because he kept talking really loud and puffing out his chest and showing us his very long toenails that he was going to kick us to death with if we tried anything. But, we're just, casual gang of young guys and old guys. We didn't care what he did. And so you're still in jail no matter what, and it's just boring as hell. So finally on day 7, the local cafe who supplied all the meals to the jail, and it was, almost always like bologna sandwiches at lunch. powdered milk and a box of cereal in the morning, usually cold white toast. And at dinner, you might get like a TV dinner heated up. But this one dinner they brought us was pork chops. And they were kind of thin, scraggly pork chops, a little overcooked, but it was still meat, you know? And we were very happy to get all those, and everybody's eating their pork chops, and they're all happy, and nobody's cheating at cards. Everybody's sharing cigarettes and eating these pork chops. And I ate mine with gusto because I was just 21 years old. So I was still putting on weight and trying to put on some muscle and poundage. So I needed protein big time. But anyhow, I chewed down to the bone. And for the next couple of days, I chewed those bones down to nothing. I just kept chomping on them and whittling them down. That's how hungry you get when you're that age. And most people that age, they know what I'm talking about. But you don't have any way to get any snacks in there, you know? So I finally get out of jail. My girlfriend comes and picks me up, and a friend, Chester, he comes along with her. And we drive up to the Yak Mountains area, which is out west of Troy. And it's a real wilderness area. And it's a temperate zone, actually, because it is one of those lower areas. And the Yak River runs through it. There's the Dirty Shame Saloon up in there, which is a dirt floor bar. At least in the early 70s, it still had a dirt floor. They hadn't built one in yet. So it was a biker kind of place. And but we ended up renting a cabin on Pine Creek. And it was an old Mennonite homestead. And Mennonites raised goats and chickens and rabbits and cows and sold milk and things like that. Now, they had all left, and their big house was being rented by somebody, and they rented the smaller cabins to other people. So in the Mennonite culture, a young man has to build his own house before he's considered a man, and he can move out of the main house and live on his own. So we got a log cabin that one of the guys had built, and the roof needed to be repaired, and it was cedar shingles. So I split cedar shingles by hand, and I repaired the roof. The walls need to be chinked, and so I mixed up cement and straw and chinked all those walls. And I built a loft inside. We threw a mattress up on that. And it had a wood stove. And it was summertime. The weather was nice, sometimes rainy, but the roof was fixed. And we could cook. There was no electricity, but we had the wood stove and the campfire and stuff like that. Also, in one of the other buildings was a 2x4 house, where you could go to the local mills and you could buy a truckload of cut off ends of 2x4s and 2x6s for like $15. You could fill up the whole back of your truck. And what they do with those is they would stack them like Legos and put a nail through it, and you would have a 3.5-inch thick wall of solid wood. And so there was one of those on the property, but it had never gotten finished. And so it was just kind of there. And the other thing about the place was they raised goats, and in the wintertime, they would cut down a small pine, and the goats would eat off all the vegetation off of it. And because it was wintertime, a lot of times the snow was deep enough that the stump would be 2 or 3 feet high. So this comes in a little bit later. So anyhow, we're going to be there for the summer. It turns out, all of our friends are coming up, and they're camping, and we're partying up there, and we're just having an idyllic kind of place and a kind of time for being 21 and 19 years old. So I've always been a reader, and I read first I read The Hobbit, and I read it by candlelight. And that was pretty cool. And then I started on the Lord of the Rings, And I started reading that by candlelight. And of course, you get enthralled with these books. And you're up all night, and you go out to take a pee break or something. And Valerie was sleeping, and I'm just up on the couch and reading by candlelight. And then you go out on a full moon night, and all these stumps have made shadows all over the place. And if you're a little bit stoned, you might be a little bit paranoid out there. And so you go out there and the coyotes are howling and there's stuff moving around in the woods at night, because there was a creek, not very far from the house where we were. And so animals would be down there getting water, and raccoons running around, stuff. But you're reading the Lord of the Rings, and there's all that suspenseful, scary stuff going on with flying dragons and mean people running around, ghouls and all that stuff. So it was a great place to read the Lord of the Rings. And I read all 3 books, and I don't remember what else I read, but we finally did have to get out of there when the weather was starting to turn cold, because we would have gotten snowed in and froze to death. It was like kind of the end of the road sort of place. But anyhow, that's how my 10 days in jail was not a terrible thing, but nothing that I really wanted to do. And that turned into finding a cabin in the woods where I spent an idyllic summer reading some good literature. And my girlfriend and I just had a really great summer living up there. And then life moved on. And there was a tragic end to my sister with the little house and everything, but I won't go into that now. And I can tell that in another story down the road. So anyhow, that's it. I hope you weren't too bored. I hope you can imagine what it was like to be in jail for 10 days. It's very boring. It's nothing like Hollywood ever shows you. And then a mountain cabin in Montana, which is a great place. But you've got to be prepared for very long winters. And I used to get up and start vehicles at 40 below, and I drove 30-something miles to work in a plywood mill. And so I'll tell some of those stories down the road too. But Montana, definitely go there for a road trip. Don't hang around too long, because the locals hate to be crowded. And they get enough tourists with Glacier National Park up there as it is, but be kind to them because they have to live there with all these tourists. And in Beverly here, we have a lot of people that come here for the summer and the beaches and checking out Salem and trying to catch a witch and whatever. And that's it. Thank you. I'll see you again soon.